And welcome back to a fresh episode of Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, co-owner over at webchoiceuk.com. And if you haven't yet, check out my weekly emails where I share actionable website, SEO and B2B marketing tips, useful podcasts, goodies, and more. You can give it a shot over at businessgrowth.email. So joining me today, I've got Chip House. Chip is the Chief Marketing Officer over at Insightly CRM. Chip, welcome to the show, sir. How are we going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on, Sam. Excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Looking forward to the show. Chip, we're going to be talking all things aligning marketing with the sales team and how we can work together to drive revenue, get the cash in the bank, keep the team happy, and hopefully have as few arguments between marketing and sales as possible. So with that, why do you think it is, Chip? Let's jump straight in. Why is it that marketing and sales historically haven't got along?
I think it's the Mars Venus thing a little bit. I mean, it just like from whence we came into the profession, and I don't think it matters if it's, a firm that sells to enterprises or to small businesses. I think generally, sales sees themselves sort of downstream from marketing's efforts, and complains that maybe, hey, marketing just gets to sit in their ivory tower and think big thoughts and spend lots of money and do artwork, and they're not responsible for any real money, right? The real business happens with us, the sales team. And so marketing, prove your worth to me, and where are the leads, where are the MQLs, you don't understand our buyers, whatever it is. I mean, there might be a number of different reasons that lead to that relationship issues, but many companies struggle with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think most of us have been there, especially when there's organizations which less slow these days from what I've seen, where you've got sales out there actually having conversations with prospects, with existing customers, existing clients. And there are sometimes situations which I'm perhaps a bit biased because I do quite a lot of selling as well as I'm involved in our own marketing campaigns for both WebChoice and our clients. So I guess I've got the fortunate ability to dabble in between both, where I can go front lines and have those selling conversations, but I can likewise get in the weeds and organize marketing and actually understand what customers are caring about. So
it's a fair criticism, right? I think that's what the sales leaders probably often feel is like, hey, marketing, you don't know what our customers want because you're not talking to them every day. I am. And frankly, if there is an ivory tower, that's one tower that has to be destroyed for marketing. Is you have to get out there and, number one, ask your sales reps more about your customers, talk to your CS leaders as well that are broadly part of the go-to-market team and the customer relationship, and understand what customers care about, understand their pain, understand what they think is most important for the product that you're offering. And marketing, needs to put that into their DNA and their messaging.
Yeah. I mean, quite a lot now I've seen with organizations and companies sharing it publicly on LinkedIn that their SDRs, their sales development, their BDRs are all reporting to a marketing leader, like a CMO or a VP of marketing.
Yeah.
And for some organizations, like we had Aaron from a company called Hyro, a tech company in Israel, and he was sharing how that's worked for their organization. He was on the show a while back. So it seems like some are going that way. I know some still report to sales leaders. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure that it makes that much difference. I think that the teams need to be highly aligned. I understand why people do it, and for some organizations it might be the right thing, because in some ways the SDRs are also part of the top part of the funnel, if you will, right? I mean, it's sort of, once there's a hand raise, which would be the best kind of lead because there's already some awareness and affinity with your brand. But SDRs also can be, doing outbound or working colder leads or something like that, where there's less affinity with the brand. And so therefore the messaging that they use is much more akin to marketing messaging, probably, because you're trying to create that understanding and trust and positive reaction to your brand that may not already exist. And so that's in some ways more akin to like a marketing kind of message than it is a sales message.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What would you say, Chip, are some of the most important things that marketing and sales need to actually agree on to make a fruitful partnership?
First and foremost, who are your customers? Who matters to you as an organization and why you should matter to them. That's really, really critical. Jennifer Zick, a marketer here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I'm based,
Yep.
said that phrase once to me. I just love it so much. Who matters to you and why should you matter to them? Because it really helps you hone in on what is my value as an organization and who am I trying to influence. And then so that ideal customer profile, that ICP, is the basis of your go-to-market strategy, but it's also the basis of a great relationship with sales, is agreeing on, hey, who are we going to talk to and
Mm,
what are we going to say to them? And so you have to understand. So again, talk to your customer facing leaders. Where I don't care if that's sales or if it's customer success. uh, do some research about your buyers, right, and learn about them. There's tools like SparkToro out there, right, where I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you can
yep.
go research who your customers are, what they read, what they listen to, what they talk about, what hashtags they use, and then kind of arm yourself with that, and then go start to engage socially, via LinkedIn, using those hashtags, following some of the influencers they follow,
Mm,
reading what they read, watching what they watch, and kind of understand, through that what they want to learn from your company.
mm. Who do you think should have more say in actually, because we've done a lot of episodes on how to find ICP and how to map out idle client profiles, but who do you think should have the final say? Like, should marketing talk to leadership and say, well, these are, I don't know, 500 of the target accounts that we want to tap into. Perhaps they're B2B tech or B2B SaaS, and perhaps they're all turning over, I don't know, 50 million plus. And yeah, we really love to speak to their VP of sales or VP of marketing because that's the ultimate decision maker. And because leadership have told us to do that, that's what we're going to, as marketing, we're going to tell our sales reps to start doing and start building conversations with? Or should it be more like sales reporting back to marketing? Well, we've tried that and we're not getting through to the VP. We're only getting through to manager level, and that is not going to work. Or is there like a middle ground you have to take? Or is there anything that's perhaps worked well with you guys over in Sightly, Chip, that you think is quite a nice strategy when it comes to actually outreach, or maybe beyond that into things like account-based marketing?
There's only one way to do it, and marketing needs to work closely with sales to develop the ICP. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, because there's who you serve today, which is one
Mm,
thing, and it's super important understanding who you serve today. What pain do you solve? How effectively do you solve it? Or are you kidding yourselves, right? I mean, and obviously you're going to see some of that in your renewal data and things like that, especially if you're a SaaS organization. You're going to see it in your usage rates and your engagement from your customers on everything you send. But there's who you serve today, and then there's who you aspirationally serve. Those can be different things, but you have to understand what the path is there. So, and you have to understand again, okay, if that's who you aspirationally are serving, maybe it's a larger customer than you serve today. You have to understand, why would you matter to them? Like
mm,
you matter to smaller customers, and be able to articulate what pain you uniquely solve for them. So, I mean, when you're building out your ICP, right? So you're going to look at six main areas. Number one is firmographics, and you need to agree on this with your sales team. What's the size of company that you're going to go after?
yep.
Either based on revenue size or number of employees. It doesn't really matter, but you have to agree on the size of the company you're going to go to, and the industries that they serve. Sometimes a blanket strategy can work with target across multiple industries, or maybe you need to be much more pinpointed. Um, Also, it may be especially important in the tech space, is understanding what other technologies they use, right? What other
Right.
technographics, if you will, Sam? So are they in a Microsoft environment? What other sales tools, right? Do they happen to use?
Sure.
back office systems do they use? That's super, super critical because it helps you understand, how your software can augment, or maybe, if they have certain tools, it like discludes you, you know. Um, psychographics, their business situation, their business operating model, how they make money. Do they have lots of resources? Have they just received funding, or have they, are they not very well resourced? I mean, all those things are super, super, super important, and you have to agree on those things with your sales team.
Yeah. 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 Got it. So really mapping down exactly what makes up this ideal client profile, what parameters around their business, their size, their revenue, any current software or technology or anything that's relevant to how you might
Yeah.
serve them. Like you say, trigger events, like if they've recently got funding, that's always a good one to leverage. If you know they've got cash to perhaps spend on your offer, your solution. Nice. Let's touch a little bit on going to market. Maybe we can share some thoughts or best practices from your perspective, Chip, around when it comes to outbound messaging, perhaps to start with, on what you think are some of the core components that make a solid outbound message, whether that's telephone or perhaps email or whatever you recommend for sales reps. And then maybe we can talk about inbound, some kind of best practices there if you're up for that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know that the outbound game has changed a lot in the past 10 years, the past even 5 years, right? It's significantly changed, I think, Sam, because fewer people are picking up their phone, fewer
Oh, for
people are
sure.
answering emails because, I mean, as a CMO, a lot of people try to sell me stuff, and it's just hard to keep up with it. I'm shocked half of them are making it into the inbox, frankly. I can't ignore them fast enough. But I have to tell you, I'm going to pay attention if I'm interested, or if they go the extra mile to show me that they actually know me and care about me and might understand my needs. But in terms of picking the accounts with the sales team, it obviously starts with the ICP, like talked about, and agreeing on that. And then you truly have to break it down to as small of a segment, maybe industry, as
Mm,
possible, and set of accounts that you think you can impact. And I think marketing's job comes first here, because we
right.
tend to be the people with a little bit more data, access to research tools and things like that, and can start the narrative of the funnel, which happens. One of my favorite funnels is the hourglass funnel, which is John Jantz's idea from Duct Tape Marketing, which is, know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, refer, right? And so
Okay.
they're never going to get to try and buy if they don't know, like, or trust you. And so it's marketing's job, I think, to at least create the awareness. Number one, the know phase. They need to know us. And frankly, a lot of your marketing and messaging, and, in this day and age, even for B2B, are you fun? Are you funny? Are you memorable? Are you remarkable? As Seth Godin says, hey, would you make a comment about a brown cow? No, you wouldn't make a comment about a brown cow. But if you saw a purple cow, you'd tell everybody you ever met, hey, I saw
Yeah,
this
yeah.
purple cow today. It was pretty amazing. And so how can your marketing be that? And so when it's time for the outreach from the salesperson, um, the beach is softer per se, right? So, um,
Yeah, yeah.
picking the accounts is one thing, and then, like, how you engage them is the second.
Do you think that your target accounts need to be warmed up somehow? I know I asked this question to quite a lot of marketing leaders that come on, but do you think they need to be warmed up slightly before sales reach out to them? I.e., I don't know, they've engaged in your LinkedIn content. Maybe you've served them some ads on LinkedIn or elsewhere in other channels. Maybe you've sent them they've attended a webinar. Maybe you've sent them a guide, whatever. Do you think that needs to happen first, or can you reach out to them stone cold?
I think you can reach out to them stone cold, but it's not going to be as effective. I think having the awareness there uh, is more likely to trigger the buyer's brain cells a little bit more. So the wheels are already turning by the time the sales rep reaches out. And
Mm,
frankly, 95% of your market's not going to be in market right now anyway, maybe, right? And so marketing doing the work to create the awareness will help create that engagement that's going to create the future pipe for your call next month or next quarter.
Yeah, yeah. And then moving it to inbound process.
Yeah.
Do you think there needs to be, of course, marketing and work on whatever strategies your organization is able to do to drive inbound, whether that is SEO, paid search, review sites, webinars, other forms of marketing, ABM, whatever they're doing to fill the funnel, let's say, to drive
Uh-huh.
hopefully quality leads, hopefully that are qualified and are right decision makers or a right ICP, hopefully have budget to do business with you, hopefully hit all those parameters that we discussed earlier. But how involved should marketing and sales be in terms of kind of what goes on initial discovery calls, whether inbound leads from the website go to an SDR or an AE, whether we use the website to qualify leads and then send them straight to an AE? I mean, what are your thoughts around, let's say, kind of first touch point between an inbound prospect that's almost raised their hand for a consult or a demo, whatever your business is set up to do, and then sending that to a sales rep?
Yeah, I think this is a big piece of the alignment. Like, I'm super aligned with our chief sales officer, and we have one or multiple weekly meetings. Actually, we have two meetings. One is with finance, one is just one-on-one. But also bringing finance into the fray for how you're spending money in January for the business, I think is really important. And then when we have one with our teams where we talk about pipeline and leads and lead quality and what's working and what's not, and that's a weekly meeting, right? And so being intentional about the alignment, I think, is the first thing, Sam. And secondly, all leads are not created equal, right? And
For
they,
sure.
so if you're a inexperienced marketing leader, you're just trying to hit that MQL number and you don't care, right? But all, where they come from, because sales, if you don't have a good relationship with the sales team, they're just say, hey, I need more MQLs, right? They're not going to say, I need more from this source, right? And so both of you need to be involved in that conversation, because a content syndication lead, or an HQL that comes in where the relationship doesn't really exist, is one thing, versus a free trial or somebody actually raising their hand and saying, hey, I want a demo. You've already made an impression on me. There's some affinity with the brand. I would love to learn more. You want more hand raisers. And so who
Yep.
that gets assigned to, some hand raisers could go right to an AE, maybe, and as a sales organization, you should be tracking how quickly you follow up, because sometimes you don't have to be good. You just have to be fast, and sometimes you're going to get the deal because you're first, even if you're more expensive. But anyway, so I think figure out in your organization, is it the SDR that can be most responsive? In most cases, it probably is, which is why it's maybe best to send it to the SDR team rather than the AE, even if it's a hand raiser, just because they can be a little bit more nimble.
What are your thoughts around? I mean, I can see pros and cons with sending it to SDRs. Like, so to take the devil's advocate,
Yeah, fair.
naturally being an SEO and web agency, I often talk about why your website should deter people, and that it should be a qualifier in the sense of openly sharing, even in
Oh, I like
B2B and
that.
in tech stuff, like openly sharing kind of what you do, who you help, who you can't help, problems you solve, and then qualifying people in the sense of, this is our process, these are clients we typically are able to help, and this is our pricing. Obviously, that's quite easy for SaaS processes because you might have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Gets a little bit more difficult when you're service based. So you might have like our prices from A to B, depending on the size of your project, etc. So I'm very much of that mind, but appreciate not everyone is, whereby your website should do the heavy lifting in terms of inbound hand raisers, and then route them to an appropriate rep. But that aside, I mean, sending inbound demo requests or inbound consult requests to SDRs, is that always a good move? Because what if they don't have the experience, product knowledge, or not even product knowledge, but ability to take a prospect through certain difficult questions that maybe only an AE or more experienced sales engineer could? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I accept your devil's advocate here for sure, because it's not right for every organization to go through SDRs or go through AEs. I think um, it depends on the velocity of your funnel, right? But I just
Mm,
know that in these days, right, especially post pandemic, there's a lot of data that shows that they expect you to be fast, right? And so if you're not super responsive, that's going to create challenges for you. And so AEs, tend to be more down funnel focused, as they should be, trying to close and engage business, where SDRs might be a little bit more nimble, like I said, to be able to, do the qualification. But amen on the great website information to sort of qualify. It's your own version of transparency sale, Sam, right? It's just truly, hey, here's who I serve, here's who I don't serve. And if you like me, great. I like you too, and come talk to us. And if you don't like
oh
me,
yeah.
let's not waste each other's time.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that came through my own pain point, right, Chip? Because myself and a couple other folks that run this company were just getting so many inbound leads, but many of them just couldn't afford what we did. So we thought,
Yeah,
let's whack our
yeah,
pricing on the site. Let's whack who we help, who we can. So makes our life so much easier. So with
yeah.
that in mind, are there any other areas of inbound that you think marketing and sales need to discuss in terms of that process or in terms of how they're fit through that we haven't covered?
Well, I think one of the things that we do in our meeting with our SDR and sales leaders is we talk about lead source by lead source, and understand the conversion rates from MQL, if you will, to actual qualified opportunity by channel. And that, I tell you, if you're not doing that, you need to do that, because it's a huge awakening. And by the way, there might be channels that convert super well, by the way, that the SDRs love, that the AEs hate,
Mm,
because they can't ever close them, but the SDRs can convert them to opportunities. And I've seen that too. And so you need to have constant um, dialogue with your sales leaders about all the different channels, and get feedback for what's working and what's not.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's an interesting take. And what are your thoughts, Chip? So a lot of companies, especially in Europe, I simply see from marketing leaders I'm connected to on LinkedIn, are taking the leap or have taken the leap in the last 12 months, 24 months or longer of moving from the lead gen model. So they've pretty much ditched the old school MQL, collecting email leads, webinar leads, gated content signups, and move purely to focusing on SQLs in the sense that they want to create demand, create awareness for their campaigns. So they're not so bothered about collecting email addresses, but more on actually building that awareness, building that demand for their company. So ultimately, to create more knowledge around the problem they solve, position their brand as the go-to in their sector. So when prospects do need their offer, they're top of mind, and then they get those inbound demo requests for the high intent buyers, which is, I suppose, what our sales team wants. They can make less cold calls. But with that in mind, where do you think? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts? Do you think companies should ditch that model altogether? What do you guys do it insightly? What are your thoughts around that topic?
Yeah, I would say we're in the change process for this, and I think MQLs are largely not useful, because their definition varies so greatly, and marketers get to define what they are, basically. I'd say marketing qualified lead doesn't matter if that's a number out of the phone book, or a Zoom info, or an intent lead, or a content download, or a free trial, or a demo. Like I said before, uh, they're not all created equal. And so because of that, they can be gamed, and they create the wrong incentives. The incentives are not necessarily aligned. Marketing is not in the business of creating MQLs. They're in the business of creating revenue. And so the way you get aligned, and this is what I love about ditching the MQL. You can still use them as a counting mechanism if you want, because it's informational for how many people you're maybe impacting and engaging, right? But there's
Yeah.
other tools too to figure that out. How many views do you get of your posts, and what kind of reach do you have on your banners, your open rates in your emails? There's lots of different metrics, and so MQLs is a legitimate metric, but marketers need to start with revenue and then work back. So as a CMO, I have one goal. It's my ARR goal, and then because that's my sales leader's goal. So it has to be my goal. And then we work together. Okay, how do we work back up? And then I try to get my team in, focused on it, at least, at the SQL level, right? Because then you are thinking about where are we really creating the opportunities, and the opportunities that have a reason to be qualified into being a legitimate opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It makes sense. And to wrap things up, Chip, in terms of, we've talked about it a bit there, but in terms of revenue and targeting, who should have the say? I mean, should it just be leadership? This is the revenue number, that's it. Should they be speaking to sales who are on the front line, having the conversations, knowing what's actually coming in, and knowing how skeptical the market is, how receptive they are to the offer, etc.? Should it be marketing, who's kind of mostly responsible for building awareness, fueling that pipeline for sales? Should it be a combination? Or what have you seen work well? What are some of the issues around that?
So sorry, Sam. The question is really about who's responsible for creating awareness, or who's responsible for the
Oh,
revenue number?
revenue targets and revenue numbers. How should they be decided? Should
Oh,
leadership
I see.
take feedback from sales or marketing, or both? Or should it simply be, this is your number, we don't really care what you think, job done?
Well, I think if you want to have engaged, happy employees as part of the business that you're building, then I think asking for input is super, super important. That's number one. But also, I think you want to really know, as a CEO, as a board member, is this an achievable target? And if
Mm,
not, I want to know why from the people I'm trusting to lead the business, for sales or for marketing, right? If they're too afraid to tell me, then you need to go get other leaders, right? I want leaders who understand their business enough to tell me when I give them a bunk number, you know, um, that's unachievable, and that doesn't mean I'm going to be happy about it, by the way. But I think, let's all work in reality. Let's all work in transparency, because if the number is unachievable, there's some reason, right? Either you don't have the team, the product, the pricing, the environment, to get there, and you need to figure out which one of those things it is.
mm. Yeah. We spoke off air just before we hit recording that you're going into, or you've just as of February gone into a new financial year. When it comes
Yeah.
to kind of setting annual targets, this will be more applicable to kind of revenue leaders and leadership, but that sort of thing. So have you got any best practices around that? Like, for example, do you guys just set it up each year? We want to go for a certain percentage more, and that's fixed, i.e., I don't know, 10% more, 20% more, whatever. Or does it vary a lot? Or are there any kind of golden nuggets of advice you could advise around that?
Yeah. So, I've been in the SaaS space now for 25 years. And so most of the time in this space, it's been a growth at all cost for a lot of the industry, and that's paid off.
Mm,
And so, generally there's an idea of what growth means, and it's probably north of 20% for mid-stage to later stage companies, even in the space. For those that are very early on, you're going to expect sometimes 3-digit growth year over year. And so I think you have to start out with, what's the goal? What does the board want? What would the market like us to achieve this year? And what's that sales number? And then work backwards from that. Meaning, okay, so if this is my sales number, what's my typical opportunity to close rate? What's my typical ACV? And then based on that, how many people do I actually have to get engaged, maybe in MQLs? Like I said, it's a useful counting measure to figure out how many opportunities I can generate. And then what's my cost per opportunity? What's my cost per lead historically? and so there's the budget that I need. So that's an oversimplified view of it. But
Yeah.
there's like 8 metrics in there that I just mentioned that you have to know. And frankly, as a marketing leader, you have to be able to spout those off. So like I can see a revenue number and I already know how much money it's going to cost for me to achieve that number, right? And granted, that changes over time, especially as we're now moving into this. Many companies are, I think, more efficient growth versus growth at all costs, and so you're looking for ways to truly engage your audience in ways that are not going to cost you $1 million, but are actually going to build your brand, leveraging organic channels, leveraging content that really speaks to your ICP. Super important.
For sure, for sure. One thing to wrap up, Chip, we haven't touched on. Any thoughts or best practices around working existing customer base, and what you folks have been up to in terms of kind of marketing and sales aligning, maybe around customer success, as they're often the ones that are talking to our existing customers, making sure they're happy, making sure they're working well with our product or our offer, and also looking for opportunities to perhaps upsell, introduce new features or ideas.
Yeah, and this is an area I'm super passionate about, so I'm glad you asked about it. So I ran customer relationship marketing in my role years and years ago, and sort of defined what that meant in the SaaS world. And for me, it was the 4 pillars: educate, upsell, satisfy, retain. And so those are what a customer marketing team, what a customer relationship marketing team should be focused on, working again closely with your existing business sales team, your support team, your CSM team, to understand what motivates customers, what they need more information on. Are they likely to recommend, likely to renew you? Again, what sources of information do they use? And, social proof doesn't go away, maybe even becomes more important for customers, because now that they've bought it, they want to understand, hey, what are other customers doing? So I've run customer advisory boards and user groups before for SaaS companies. Customers love that. The biggest win for them is to meet some other customer that has a similar problem that solved it on your platform. And you need to create those opportunities for your customers when you're the customer marketing leader, and it'll pay off. So we had our best growth year this past year than any other year. And because I hired a customer marketing manager earlier in the year, we started focusing on those principles, and it really paid off.
Yeah. What was that framework you said? I think there was 4 steps you said just at the start of
that. I said educate, upsell, satisfy, retain, and there's probably more. Build trust.
Yeah, I like that. Short and
know,
easy to remember. Good.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Excellent, Chip. So thanks very much for talking all things sales, marketing, and ultimately, like you say, hitting that revenue number, because that's what it all boils down to. So appreciate you sharing your thoughts and insights. Enjoyed the chat. So with that, please do tell everyone more about how they can learn about Insightly, best ways to get in touch, and any other ways to connect with yourself or the company.
Yeah, best way to find me is on LinkedIn, and I'm at Chip House. You can find me, and Insightly, it's at insightly.com. And we've been in this space for over 11 years and get thousands of customers, and I'm just passionate about this topic.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, appreciate you having on the show. We will put all those links in the show notes at businessgrowth.marketing. And thanks once again for coming on, Chip.
Hey, Sam, thanks for having me.
No worries. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, a quick rating or review on your podcast channel of choice goes a long way. Or if you're on YouTube, a subscribe is much appreciated. And we'll catch you on the next one for more no BS B2B marketing tips and insights to grow your revenue. See you soon.